and Culture Commission that focuses on the arts and cultural diversity of our city. Its purpose is to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was set up as an advisory committee to the City Council. It is interesting that our city is known for its seasonal activities, especially Oktoberfest, a German festival, and more recently, Juneteenth. Yet 20% of our population identify themselves as Latino or Hispanic, 7% Black, and 6% Asian. Another interesting fact is that 15% of La Mesa residents were born outside of the United States. It is commendable that there was a desire on the part of the City Council to increase our cultural sensitivity with greater knowledge, awareness, and acceptance of other cultures. However, it would appear that there is a lack of interest or motivation to celebrate the Hispanic culture during this time of year, especially since it is nationally the Hispanic Heritage Month. Another observation is that our primary celebrations are Oktoberfest, the Christmas Village, and Flag Day, and all are centered in the village. The question is, in the interest of meeting the goal of creating a city that celebrates all the cultures represented in our city, and in order to build positive relationships in all parts of La Mesa, not just in the village, do you have suggestions for recommendations to the Commission on the Arts and Cultural Diversity or to any of the other organizations that want to build neighborhood bridges of appreciation for all our residents and for those whose ethnic and cultural roots are from other countries? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I want to start by saying, as far as diversity, it's our city manager's goal also when hiring to cast a wide net and give as much access to as many candidates as possible to create diversity. And in that vein, the police chief recently said PD used to be 2% female, and now it's 20%. And so as far as the employees. As far as the arts and culture, we had a La Mesa Arts Foundation earlier, and I'm glad that we've recreated this. I think if you looked at the Oktoberfest, I know there's always criticism, and I understand that. We always can improve. But if you looked at the dance and the music that was happening at different venues, it was multicultural. We asked the promoter, Laurel McFarland, to bring in different cultures so they could showcase themselves and educate people. Also, we have lots of other activities. Sundays at 6, we have the farmers market, and we're charging them and asking them to cast a wide net and bring in as many different diverse cultures to not only show their wares and to sell things, but to have music and have dancing and have singing to educate people and diversify our culture in La Mesa. I think the arts culture, my suggestion to them is to push out. And we have programs and funding now. We've been working with the La Mesa Chamber to get outside the village and to go to North La Mesa, who thinks that they don't exist because of the village, and to have activities. And we already had an activity at one of the strip malls, and it was a multicultural event. And we're going to continue to do those things. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. I really appreciate the question too. As the daughter of a Jewish grandmother and the granddaughter of German immigrants, we do need to celebrate all sorts of culture and all sorts of diversity. When you look up here on the dais, we have a great cross-section. It would be great to have our city council look like all of us. We've got our first Latina councilwoman sitting there, Ms. Lothian. We have immigrants' daughters. We have a Black woman. We have these 2 white guys, but we'll forgive them. But, but another thing that we need to look at, Christmas in the Village was renamed Holiday in the Village, but nothing has changed. There's other holidays going on. And I think that the Village Association probably is very receptive to having their event promoter really reach out. And they're the people who the city partners with McFarland Productions. Another thing that we need to think about is diversity of opinion. We need to have all these opinions out there. We are a city that is not red or blue, but purple, very purple. Another thing we need to think about is economic diversity, working people, how things affect them. It's all something that I hope whoever is on the council and mayor really takes to heart. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question, Lois. I think it's important as a civil rights advocate and as a co-founder of an organization based here in La Mesa. It's called Borderlands for Equity. I think it's really critical for us to continue to work towards bridging the gaps that we have in our community. And the wonderful Oktoberfest event that we have, the La Mesa Holiday Village, as well as making sure we continue to celebrate and help Juneteenth thrive and grow throughout the years, I think is critical. Introducing maybe a spring festival for our folks that enjoy the springtime and when the spring equinox happens is also really important. We want to be able to bridge these things to be able to heal our community. There was so much that happened in the past few years, and to be able to bridge that and heal those pains, we can be able to use art and culture as a means of creating conversation, dialogue, and encouraging the arts in our community. Artists bring people who come in and are able to watch and able to pay and able to visit our community. Artists bring in a wonderful theater, wonderful music, and we want to expand this in the western parts of La Mesa, in the northern parts of La Mesa. All parts of La Mesa should be able to experience this and enjoy the diversity that is La Mesa. We should focus on how our diversity helps our community thrive and how the different cultures that we come from actually makes us that much more beautiful and that much more brilliant.
Thank you, Michigan. Coming from the grandson of Sicilian immigrants and myself, I'm 100% Sicilian. I'm married to a Mexican, and we have two Mexicalians. We have two kids who are Mexicalians. And I love the cultural diversity. Lois, thank you for this question. I really appreciate it. And I think I just could sum this up probably in one sentence. There's always room to improve. I'm sure there's some great programs about the arts and culture, fantastic, great programs. There's always room to improve. But I would say this, that we establish, in order to obtain cultural diversity, we establish that all life is inherently valuable. If we can establish that all life is inherently valuable, guess what? The natural outcome or result is valuing all human life is diversity. That's all I'm gonna say. That's it.
Okay, so I'm the one that's half Guatemalan up here, and I have never noticed that there's not a Hispanic event in La Mesa, and I don't care. So I love Flag Day. I love concerts at 6. I loved Oktoberfest. I love Holiday in the Village. I love everything that happens at Grossmont Center. I don't think we have to have an Hispanic event and an African American event, and we just don't need all that. I was at Oktoberfest, and I 2 nights in a row I had a blast, and I noticed, like everywhere I look, Asian, Black, Middle Eastern, white, Hispanic, just all over the place without a government saying, here's your event, here's your program. It was natural and harmonious. And there's nothing in La Mesa stopping anyone from doing whatever. So the Hispanic group wants to come up and do a Cesar Chavez picnic, they do it. There's no one there. You don't have to encourage it or block it. Just do it. La Mesa is extremely open, and our city council definitely shows it. Asian, Black, half Guatemalan, Jewish, white, Greek. So we already have all that. So I don't like obsessing on identity politics. And I think that's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Hold our applause, please, so that we can continue to move us along. That'd be great. Thank you, Patricia. Yes.
Thank you, Lois, for that question. Diversity is important because we miss out when we don't learn about one another. We actually lose when we haven't taken the time to, I'm sorry, somebody talking?
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. I co-chaired the inaugural this year for Juneteenth and Friends, La Mesa Juneteenth and Friends. And we focused on family, community fun, food, entertainment, music, dance, and we involved our children in our community, and we really focused on inviting everyone to celebrate the Jubilee. There's a lot of people that we have a government holiday called Juneteenth, and there's a lot of people that still don't know what Juneteenth is all about. And so we wanted to celebrate the Jubilee and include all. And we got together over 40 people to volunteer their time and do all kinds of work behind the scenes to make that group happen. We were hoping for about 250 people. We got almost 1,500 people to our first event right here in La Mesa. We were representing East County. It's never happened before. So there is a reason for diversity, and it does include people instead of exclude people. And we can do that whenever we participate and start up things ourselves and volunteer. Thank you.
We have one last question to ask Esther, please, if you wouldn't mind. By the way, I will invite some applause because all of these questions were written by members of the outreach ministry of this church and presented by folks of the church, and so I want to appreciate those who took the time to put these questions together.
Good evening. I'm going to ask a question about environment. At the July City Council meeting, the Climate Action Plan, known as CAP, annual review was presented. The City of La Mesa is taking some good steps toward mitigation and adaptation in addressing greenhouse gas emissions, meeting the tree canopy coverage target of 33% by 2035, and moving towards the commitment to 100% renewable power by 2035. The existing cap no longer meets the current standards of the United Nations Climate Channel Panel, nor state goals on reducing carbon emissions to ensure a livable planet for our children, our grandchildren, and future generations. The La Mesa cap will be updated and voted on in 2023. If elected or re-elected, you will have a say in what can be added to the action plan. Ideas for reducing carbon emissions on the table so far include studying the feasibility of changing the building codes for new home construction to require all electric power, and land use policies encouraging use of public transportation, thus reducing travel time in cars, and adding a social equity section to address the inequities in which climate change affects low-income neighbors the most. Please share your personal priorities and reasoning on these three measures that are under discussion for the revised Climate Action Plan. First, changing building codes for new home construction to require all electric power. 2, supporting transit-oriented land use policies to encourage people to use public transportation for daily commutes in order to reduce emission from cars, and adding a social equity section to the cap to address inequities caused by climate change.
Thank you, first of all, for mentioning trees. Everyone out there, it ends the 31st of this month. If you're in the 91942 zip code, you can get tree rebates from Sempra Energy, SDG&E. Trees, gallons of trees. To the question of natural gas for homes, I am not in favor of that. We as people, cannot bear the burden of those increased prices for energy. We simply cannot. I would not be in favor of any modifications to the cap that increase the burden on the working people of La Mesa. It is not time. That is not going to happen. We are not there yet. We just simply aren't. I know my house is almost all electric. I look at the difference between my gas bill and my electric bill. It's incredible. My partner's house is all gas. It's night and day. We're not rich people. I make $65,000 a year. That's my income. I cannot afford to heat my house on all electric. That's a terrible mistake. There's got to be a better way to do this. There has to be a better way. Transit-oriented development is a great idea if the people will use the transit. Thus far, that's been kind of a mixed bag. So as far as the climate action plan, making it all electric, I am absolutely opposed to that for the working people, the average person of La Mesa.
Thank you for that question. And I am absolutely in support of electrifying homes and making sure we can be able to create a sustainable environment for all of our future generations. Your children and your grandchildren will have to live in a society that is literally burning up. What we have faced this summer was heat waves. For the folks that have faced heat waves and have faced brownouts and blackouts throughout this entire summer, folks were actually suffering. There are people like my attorney who are pregnant and didn't have air conditioning at her home. There are many people in our community that are suffering. And the climate action plan is actually good governance. And I applaud our mayor and our city council for the leadership and the vision that they've had in making sure we can create sustainable and a greener and walkable communities here in La Mesa. We live in a community that is disproportionately affected by folks who continue to suffer much more so than any others because they're affected negatively by this climate action change. And these things need to be addressed. Our marginalized communities continue to pay more when it comes to dealing with these issues, and we need to be able to address these issues as a community. And so I urge everybody to support our climate action, our already existing climate action plan, and making sure we support what we need to fulfill with our state and regional partners in this work, whether it be the community power. Well, thank you so much.
And again, please, if you could hold your applause, that would be great.
Thank you, Mitchka. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think there's good steps that we all can take. There's some low-hanging fruit in this area, and I think really when it comes down to it, no one would argue that we should recycle, right? We should recycle. We should pick up trash. Well, the big thing, we were at a park the other day. There's trash everywhere here in La Mesa. So taking care of the environment starts with picking up trash, recycling. Yes, no one would argue with planting gardens. A beautiful garden up there on MacArthur Park, right? There's a beautiful community garden. Wonderful, wonderful. Those are all great things, but let me just share this. And I'm in a church right now, Pastor Christian, right? So I can share something personal, not political. Will you allow me? Tony, yes, you can share that? Yes, will you allow me to share that? My faith, I'll just tell you this, my faith instructs me that our Creator created this planet. And for us to enjoy, to steward, and to maintain, which requires a great deal of care, which recycling, trash pickup, planting gardens, that's all part of it. And for me, I always want to bear in mind this as priority, that from my faith standpoint, Pastor Christian's faith standpoint, we worship the Creator, not the creation. And that's something that's very important for me. How I take care of His garden says how much I love Him. And I will end with that. Thank you.
Okay, so we've been lulled into thinking climate action plans is planting trees and painting bike lanes and more charging stations and Teslas and Priuses. What's going to happen what's coming up very soon is going to be very, very painful. This zero carbon, net zero carbon, it's a step toward totalitarianism. We're going to be told where to live. The pain at the pump is intentional. They want us out of our cars, and they want us on apartment buildings on trolleys. Take a good look at Moscow, and look at all those apartment buildings on train tracks. I don't want to live in a country like that. And the climate action plans are not California. We're going to lose gas stoves, gas fireplaces, gas cars, gas washers, and just all of it is going to go away. And I'm in real estate. As soon as somebody walks in and sees an electric stove, the first thing out of their mouth is tell me there's a gas line. Yeah. So right now, we're all kind of like thinking it's not going to happen. Well, if we don't stop this climate action plan lunacy, it is going to happen, and we're going to have a giant exodus out of this state. And I'll tell you this right now, I go into homes now where people are burning up in their own homes because they don't want to pay for their utility bills, or they're freezing in their homes because they don't want to pay utility bills. And I'll tell you, I go to Mexico all the time, and I don't care how poor a person is, they still have a car in their driveway because that's the only way to survive. So we're not going to become a society of apartment dwellers taking trolleys and buses. It's just such a wrong path to go down.
Thank you for that question. Just for people who don't know about the Climate Action Plan, or CAP, it stands for Energy, Solid Waste, Transportation, Water, and, Solid Waste, Transportation, and Water. There is a balance here. You don't have to go dive all the way in the pool and go to the deep end and you don't know how to swim yet. We have to have something that we are doing to protect our environment. So those things are not costing the city any extra money. The CAP program includes the development that is in progress already, and there is no extra dollars, there's no tax dollars involved in this to make this an achievable goal. It doesn't mean that every single home is going to have everything that it needs and be all electric, is not my understanding. My understanding is going forward with the builds that we have. And it's also a benefit to us to lower our emissions so that we could actually continue to breathe on Earth. Everyone knows that, we have an issue with, our pollution and everything else that's going on in the world. And it's not just America, this is in the world. So we need to pay attention to that.
The Climate Action Plan, just so everyone is clear, is California state law, and we had to adopt a Climate Action Plan to be compliant. So the city of La Mesa did that, and all of the things that have been talked about are part of the Climate Action Plan, as far as planting trees and having a canopy and reducing the waste of water and conserving energy and all those things. Many years ago, before most of you were born, there was the Clean Water Act back in 1973 and the Clean Air Act. And if you had ever driven to Los Angeles, you know that those things did improve their climate. And I know that when I was at Helix High School, we would have third-degree smog alerts, and so we wouldn't have to run the mile and a half. So there is a way to improve the environment. I'm hesitant to put everything ahead of the technology. And during the brownouts recently, when people couldn't charge their electric cars, personally, I'd like to get an electric car, but if you can't charge it because the grid won't handle it, I think that we need to do some work before we jump ahead. I think that's important. The other part of it is transit. 4% of the people use the trolley. I think that we need to improve transit to make it more accessible and also desirable. So two things: that when you're taking the trolley, you don't feel that you're in harm's way, number one. Number two, that it goes to the places that you want it to go. And so I think that's an important thing before. I know the environment's important. It's important to me. It's important to all my students because they're going to be growing up in it. But what's the environment without the people in it? So we can't say that we're going to do everything in spite of all the people. So two things have to happen. Thank you.
Now I'm aware that there are so many more questions. I had a gentleman who came up and said, I really would like to have them touch on infrastructure and issues of our streets and continuing that construction and care of those things. And there are more, policing and all of those items that we have a lot of conversation to have, to still have. And so I encourage us to continue to ask those questions. I think I can say this, but these people are accessible. These are our neighbors. I was mentioning I ride by half of their houses when I ride my bike to work. Here, we are living in the same neighborhood and we have access to one another and we can work together to have these conversations. I appreciate and I need to applaud, and I hope you will applaud all of these candidates in that, yes, go ahead and applaud. I know that they both agree on some things and disagree on other things, but they all were willing to be here and to be polite and respectful of one another. And I love to hear that they appreciate working with one another, regardless of any sort of party lines or anything like that. So this is a great model of our democracy at work here in La Mesa, and I pray that we can continue to work together in that way. And I know that they will continue to seek to do that. So with all of that, I'm not going to ask another question. And let you all, I was thinking through this, you might want to stand and step outside before you get mauled by people up here. You can leave, I guess, if you would like. But if you would like to engage with some of your citizens, you're more than welcome, and we have space out on the patio this evening. So can we give them a round of applause once again? Remain seated so that they can find their way out. Does that work for you all? Does that work? And I just want to say thank you very much for all of you to come, both here and online. It really is an important part of our democracy to have these conversations, to be present for one another. And I encourage you to look at all the information that is placed on your handout that was offered on your way in, so you can learn more about this and other things that are happening in the life of the church. Thank you so very much this evening.